Nonverbal communication, facial expressions, hand gestures, body language, super important for communication. Today, we're talking about different hand gestures that you need to start using. What's up, Explearners? I'm MD, helping you upgrade your life through better communication. Welcome to Explearning, and in this video, we're talking about different hand gestures that you need to start to use so that you can ramp up your communication game and make your message more clear for the people listening to you. When used correctly, hand gestures help bring the focus to you and mirror the emphasis and the structure of your speech patterns. Now, this can be on stage, in public speaking, or in a conversation. And you've probably noticed the successful TED Talkers out there use a lot of hand gestures, and now you're gonna know why. So if you want to start incorporating these awesome hand gestures in your one-on-one communication and your public speaking, then stay tuned. Before we get into it, let me just say this. Make sure that the words match the hand gestures you use. There's nothing worse than trying to just randomly use a hand gesture for the sake of using a hand gesture that doesn't even match what you're trying to say. So an obvious example of this would be saying, "Great job." So unless you're being sarcastic, which you're not in that case, that's an example of using random gestures to try to make a point. So we don't want to do that. The other thing that we don't want to do is be frantically using our hands. That's very distracting. And unless you're putting on a musical production and using jazz hands, you want to avoid doing that because it is really distracting for your listeners. All right, so without further ado, let's jump right into it. Here are the 11 gestures that you can start using today. Number 1, sweeping outwards. This sweeping outwards gesture is commonly used when we want to welcome somebody. So you would do this in the beginning of your talk. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to see you here. Okay? So sweeping outwards. Another gesture, number 2, both hands on your heart or in your heart space. This is signaling that it's very important to you. So you might say this to your spouse who's going to leave his meeting early to go and take your kids to soccer. You get the idea. You're showing that it is important to you and that you're grateful. The other thing, kind of similar to this, is one hand on your heart or in your heart space. This is really showing that you're touched and you're moved and you're happy about it, right? So it's like a thank you. Thank you so much. I'm touched. It means a lot to me. I'm speechless. What a kind thing to say. I don't know what to say. That was very kind. What a sweet, lovely gesture. Okay, so try those out. Number 4, when you're trying to show two different things. So this and that. This and that. Two things, right? Or if I'm saying on one hand, this thing, on the other hand, that thing. We have 2 shipments coming in from Japan. Mochi and matcha. 2 of my favorite things from Japan. The other thing you can do is to show on one hand, on the other hand, right? So you're showing 2 distinct entities here. And that's really good to verbalize, not only with your words, but also with the gesture to accompany it. The other thing you do is you bring your hands together in agreement. It shows that you are coming together on something. Okay, you could do like that, or like this, like that. Connection. Agreement. Your father and I both agree that you need to do your homework right after you get home from school. We both think that exercise is so important for your well-being. Now, number 6, I want you to avoid entirely, and that is pointing. That is just so rude. Every time I see that or if somebody does that to me, I just shrivel up inside. It's really uncomfortable and it's not polite. It's super rude. So the thing that you can do instead, and you'll notice politicians do this, but you don't have to do it necessarily. I have another thing that you can do. But you've noticed probably politicians point like this. If they're making a point or if they're actually pointing to an individual in the audience, they'll do this. It's like a thumbs up, but not really. It's like a sleeping thumbs up. So you could think of it as a point. But what I prefer is to extend my hand out. So let's say when I was teaching, I would call on the students like that. Or I recently gave a talk and there was a Q&A and there were a couple people raising their hand and they were sort of close together. So I said, yes, what is your question? What's your question? So much better than saying, what's your question? You. Don't do that, right? No pointing. Instead, try that. What's your question? That. Right? Okay. So you get the idea. The other thing that you can do, number 7, it's an inward sweeping. So the first one was an outward sweeping. This is an inward hand sweeping gesture, and that shows inclusivity. It's a collective we. So we are part of the same team. We are on the same page here. We are in this together. We are a team. So you show that you're bringing everyone in, right? And the sweeping inward motion shows this inclusivity, which is so important. So if you're giving a pep talk to your team, that's something that you'd want to use. If you are a captain of your team, you might want to do that too. Like, let's say you're on a sports team. Try it out. It's a really good way of showing everyone that we're in this together. One of my favorites is the zigzag. So you're doing this and then you're kind of moving your body as well. And I call it the zigzag, but basically what it does is it shows that we're on the same page. Now you can do this in business or you can do this in a casual setting, but it shows that you're on the same wavelength as the person that you're talking to and that you are in this with each other. Okay. So it also shows agreement. So it's kind of like that in the sense that it's coming together, but it takes it a step further because it's more dynamic. So try that out. It's signaling, I get you. I understand. Okay, so try that. The next one, you want to show big and small using your hand gestures, right? So you know that fishing story when people say they caught a big fish and it grows every time they tell the story. So it's like, I caught a fish this big. It was huge. You're showing it with your hands and you're not like actually measuring out how big it was, but you're giving the person that you're communicating with an idea so they can visualize it. Same with smaller objects. So don't worry about it. The spider was only that big, super small. Don't worry about it. Or that spider was humongous. It was like that big. Right? It really helps guide the listener, but also makes your point even more emphasized and clearer as well. Number 10, when you want to show growth or progress, you can use this gesture. So you start from the left and you go to the right and you show an upward curve or a arrow. Think of it as a graph that you're showing. So this is to show progress or an increase in numbers or a spike or growth. So we're so happy, Explearners, because our subscriber count is going up. You're awesome. Thank you so much for subscribing. I just had to do that little plug. We've made a ton of progress over the year. We've made a ton of progress this year. Thank you, everyone. Number 11 is numbers. So when you are giving a number from 1 to 10, because you 10 fingers, you want to show that. Here are the 3 things I want to tell you today. The 3 strategies. So try that out with numbers. It's a really good way of making it even clearer to the person listening to you. The last thing I will say is, please be mindful that if you're communicating in a cross-cultural context, make sure that you've done the research ahead of time as to what hand gestures or facial expressions, anything related to nonverbal communication is deemed appropriate in that given social setting. Please, please, please be mindful of this. Otherwise, you might run into a communication snafu or conundrum. And there's a whole series about how to deal with sticky situations. So definitely check that out. And I have one in there about cross-cultural communication to avoid miscommunications. But a lot of times, if you go into a different cultural context, not knowing what is considered appropriate or inappropriate, there I just did the differentiating hand gesture, you might confuse the people that you're interacting with, and you might inadvertently, not on purpose, offend somebody. So save yourself the heartache and the confusion and do the research ahead of time as to what hand gestures are okay in that cultural context. Okay? Try incorporating these hand gestures to your communication. Try them out on stage. Try them out in the coffee shop. Try them out in the boardroom. And let me know how it goes in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and share. It does really support the channel and it makes me so happy when you do. Also, subscribe to join our tribe and get all of our communication videos. The next video I'm posting is all about how to introduce yourself so you don't have to worry about being awkward or shy in these social interaction settings, because I'm going to give you great strategies to deal with that. So I'll see you next time. Happy exploring!